Godspeed.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Rocket Tranquility, we copy you on the ground.
New possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
1-0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery, roger. Go for deploy.
And everybody in the shuttle program, the crew is go for launch.
Roger. Nice. Be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
And there it is. You're looking at the American-made rocket and spacecraft that will return American astronauts to the International Space Station from American soil for the first time since the retirement of the space shuttle, last flown nearly 9 years ago. Today, we're giving it another shot with our partners at SpaceX. Wednesday's first attempt was postponed due to that wild weather. But if all goes well today, we will mark a new first in NASA's storied history and usher in the commercial crew era of American spaceflight.
At 3:32 Eastern Time this afternoon, NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken are expected to lift off from Pad 39A aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft atop a Falcon 9 rocket. If the weather cooperates, today's attempt will mark SpaceX's first ever flight with crew and the beginning of a new chapter in human spaceflight.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Kennedy Space Center, home of the wild Florida weather, which is why we're sitting inside again today, but this time a little bit closer with some plexiglass between us.
Yes, and I'm Lauren Lyons, a senior Starlink development engineer at SpaceX, and joining us today is retired astronaut and NASA meatball lover, Leland.
Thank you, Lauren and Marie. It's great to be back. That weather was really wild last what, 2 days ago, 3 days ago?
Yes, it feels like yesterday. I don't know if depending on how much you slept, could be the same day.
I
but I think it was Wednesday.
But down to T minus 17, and our teams made the right call. You know, we didn't want to go through that weather and have something happen. And I think that, you know, we're back to this hallowed ground thing, Pad 39A. We are, you know, my time back there was in 2008, 2009 on Space Shuttle Atlantis, launching to the International Space Station and building out the International Space Station. So now Doug and Bob can launch Crew Dragon and go to an assembly complete.
Hopefully those odds are going to be, I don't know if they're going to improve, but 50-50 is not bad. It could be worse, right? So we have teams all over the country covering the action from SpaceX headquarters in California, Mission Control in Houston, and our social media desk in Washington, and of course, right here in Florida.
Today's mission will be Crew Dragon's second test flight and its first test with humans on board. We're a little more than 4 hours away from liftoff. Bob and Doug have had their lunch and have completed their medical checks in advance of launch. In about 15 minutes, NASA is going to turn the crew over to the SpaceX team. And once that happens, there are a series of key milestones to complete as we count down to T0. The first one is suit up. Now, the suit up room is located in NASA's Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building, or the ONC. Here, the SpaceX team is going to help the astronauts put on their suits and perform key suit checkouts. From there, the next step is crew walkout. The astronauts are going to leave the ONC building for final goodbyes with friends and family gathered outside of the facility before they head out to the launch pad.
And following final goodbyes, the crew will get in a Tesla and begin the roughly 20-minute drive to Pad 39A. Now, once at the pad, the crew will ascend the fixed service structure in order to board the spacecraft in a process we call crew ingress. During ingress, the SpaceX team will run a series of checks to ensure the suits, seats, and the vehicle interactions are all functioning properly.
And after all the vehicle and crew checkouts are completed, the SpaceX closeout team will close Dragon's hatch with Bob and Doug safe inside. About 40 minutes before launch, the crew access arm, which is that long suspended walkway that the astronauts are going to use to board Dragon, it's going to retract away, followed by the arming of the launch escape system.
Once the arm is retracted and the escape system is armed, that's when propellant loading on the Falcon 9 rocket will begin. About 5 minutes before liftoff, Dragon will be configured for what we call terminal count. This is when Dragon's onboard computers take control of the vehicle.
And at T0, again, a little over 4 hours from now, if all goes well and the weather cooperates, Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 will lift off from Pad 39A, carrying astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. Roughly 12 minutes after liftoff, Dragon will separate from Falcon 9's second stage, enter its activation phase, and begin using its own onboard propulsion system to carry Bob and Doug to their destination, which is the International Space Station. And as I mentioned previously, Bob and Doug are just finishing up their lunch, and we are currently awaiting their arrival to the suit-up room.
And while we await that, you will notice over the course of this broadcast that we do not have crowds gathered here at Kennedy Space Center. And that, of course, is one of the impacts of our protocols to protect each other and our teams. We would normally have tens of thousands of guests here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida to view the launch. But even though we couldn't host a lot of guests here, you can still join us through every step of this historic mission from wherever you are. We have a team dedicated to those of you following along on social media, and NASA's Tahira Allen is in Washington right now leading that effort. Hi, Tahira.
Hey, Marie. And hey, everyone out there. My name is Tahira Allen. And if you are one of the 4.9 million people tuning in on Wednesday, we are so glad to see you here again. If you weren't able to witness the pre-launch activities on Wednesday, you are in luck because I'm here to bring you all the excitement happening on social media around the nation. This is a big day for both NASA and SpaceX, and we are ready for you to be a part of it. We had a lot of people engaged on Wednesday, so we want to see if we can top that energy today. We will be sharing your photos and thoughts live on air during today's broadcast, so don't hold back and show us how you're getting ready for liftoff. You can join the conversation by using the hashtag LaunchAmerica on NASA's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I'll be monitoring that hashtag LaunchAmerica all day to highlight your social media posts throughout the show. You'll also be able to engage in social media polls during today's broadcast. And so even if you tuned in before, these are brand new polls, so just head on over to NASA's Twitter to cast those votes. So I know most of you are tuning in from home today, but that doesn't mean you can't get involved in the action. Check out NASA's Instagram and Facebook to find our Launch America augmented reality filters. They place you right at Kennedy Space Center, and you can actually see the Falcon 9 rocket lift off in a pair of sunglasses. If you haven't already, be sure to check out our first ever global NASA social. So head on over to NASA's Facebook to join the group. We've got all new social badges, a nice fresh photo here, some Q&As with some very special guests, and also behind-the-scenes tours of Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And not to mention, just an awesome community of people excited to witness this moment. So, just right here in training, getting ready for that Launch America. So if you're just tuning in, to get us started, we have a poll for you on Twitter right now. We want to know what NASA logo you are sporting for today's launch. The iconic meatball or the iconic worm? Head on over to NASA's Twitter to cast those votes. And with that, let's head back to Lauren at Kennedy Space Center. Lauren?
Thanks, Tahira. I don't want to sway the vote, but you know, I'm all about that worm.
Meatball.
The debate rages on.
Aside from our debate, the purpose or the main purpose of today's demonstration mission is to put Crew Dragon through the final operational tests to officially certify the vehicle for human spaceflight. The SpaceX and NASA teams have put years of work in development, testing, and training to get us here today. And now we are just around the corner from seeing Falcon 9, Crew Dragon, and Bob and Doug lift off for the first time, and doing it from that same historic launch pad that first sent humans to the moon more than 50 years ago.
Now, it's really good that we're inside today because I'm still ready to run across here and try to hitch a ride to space on that Crew Dragon. It's a beautiful vehicle, what SpaceX and NASA have done together to create this incredible rocket. It makes me want to just run out that door right now and get out there.
Well, you're not allowed to leave today, but Leland, I don't know if you've seen some of the comments on social media. You've been nominated by a lot of followers to fly one of the future missions of Crew Dragon. So I don't know.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
So we are just about 3 miles from Launch Complex 39A. Leland, don't get any ideas. I know that's not that far. That's where liftoff will happen in a little over 4 hours. And so we want to check in now with the team at SpaceX Hawthorne, where NASA's Dan Hewitt and SpaceX's Jesse Anderson are keeping an ear on operations. Good morning, guys.
Hey, good morning, Marie. Thanks so much. First off, hashtag Team Worm. But hello from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. My name's Dan Hewitt. We're here for round 2 for this historic launch.
And Dan, we're so glad to have you back here today. Hopefully the weather is working in our favor today. It looks really sunny and nice out there, so fingers crossed. My name is Jesse Anderson, and I'm a lead manufacturing engineer here at SpaceX. And we are so honored to be NASA's partner in returning humans to space from the shores of Kennedy Space Center. 10 years ago, we sent the Dragon that's displayed right behind us on its first orbital demonstration flight, and I speak for all of us here at SpaceX when I say we could not be more excited to finally be sending humans to the International Space Station.
And just as a refresher, today's mission is known as Demonstration Mission 2 or Demo 2. This is going to be the first time a commercially built spacecraft will launch people to the space station. Demo 2 is an end-to-end flight test from launch to docking all the way to splashdown in the Atlantic at the end of their mission. And this is the final test for NASA to certify SpaceX for regular crew flights to the space station. Right now, SpaceX and NASA have teams working together around the country. On the SpaceX side, they have teams at the Cape performing final launch date checkouts as we speak, just to make sure Dragon is healthy and good to go.
At the moment of liftoff, we will transfer authority over Dragon from our firing room in Florida to Mission Control here in Hawthorne. Mission Control will have insight and command of Dragon systems for the entirety of this upcoming mission. And since Dragon is a highly autonomous vehicle, our teams in Mission Control will be continuously monitoring the health and performance of the spacecraft through the entire duration of its journey. That's from liftoff all the way until Dragon splashes back down on Earth.
While there are a number of people on headset here in Mission Control right behind us, the mission director is the one in charge. It's also where the SpaceX Core, which stands for Crew Operations Responsible Engineer, who's essentially the voice talking to astronauts throughout their flight, will reside.
Dragon and Falcon 9 together have years of operational experience, or what we refer to as flight heritage. SpaceX has successfully completed 22 flights of Dragon to and from orbit since 2010, and that includes 21 trips to the International Space Station. And to get us where we are today, not only have we conducted thousands of hours of testing, but we've also enhanced and added a number of safety features to Dragon.
One of the most important safety features on Crew Dragon is the launch escape system. It's a huge advancement in the safety of human spaceflight, and SpaceX was able to demonstrate the system in 2 important tests. The first one coming back in 2015 with the pad abort test, which we're watching some video back from right now. And then a little bit more recently, last January of this year, the in-flight abort test. Dragon's launch escape system is outfitted with 8 Super Draco engines that are integrated directly into the spacecraft body. This enables Dragon to separate from Falcon 9 and carry astronauts to safety in case of an emergency on the launch pad or all the way up to orbit.
And in addition to the launch escape system, SpaceX has completed over 80 parachute tests, which includes nearly 30 tests of just the upgraded Mark III parachutes that's flying on today's vehicle. And that's to ensure a safe landing back on Earth, even in the unlikely event that one of those 4 main parachutes fails.
And we can't forget the significance of our first demonstration mission just last year, which itself was an end-to-end flight test to and from the International Space Station, just no actual humans on board. But now, though, let's go to the one and only SpaceX's Principal Integration Engineer, John Innsbrucker, for our first status update. John?
Oh, you're so kind, Dan. Good morning from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. As Dan said, I'm John Innsbrucker, and I'll be bringing you status updates throughout today's countdown. We're currently just inside T-minus 4 hours, 9 minutes. Today, as mentioned, is our second launch attempt. The first attempt was scrubbed on the 27th. In that attempt, the team proceeded deep into the countdown, but when 3 weather rules concerning lightning and cloud cover were no-go, and there was no chance of improving, the SpaceX launch director stopped the countdown at just inside T-minus 17 minutes, and the launch was scrubbed. Now, following the scrub, we drained back the propellants from Falcon 9, and the crew left the capsule and returned to crew quarters. Now, since the scrub, Falcon 9 has remained vertical on the pad, as you can see there on the monitor. It's remained powered up. The launch crew currently reports no significant issues on the Falcon 9. Minimal activity has occurred on Dragon over the same period. The most significant task was topping off oxygen and nitrox in the environmental control system. Now, we just finished up a weather briefing to the crew a few minutes ago. Conditions at Kennedy Space Center for launch, 50% chance of violating conditions, which is also 50% chance of good conditions. The basic concerns are precipitation, cumulus thick clouds, anvil clouds, all related to the threat of lightning. We're also watching the weather downrange in case there is an abort and Dragon has to splash down off the coast. Further, several hundred kilometers away, we are watching a series of weather patterns that look like they're going to be good, so we are continuing into the count right now. Coming up at T-minus 4 hours, the SpaceX launch director will perform a poll. That'll verify the conditions are safe there at the pad to open it back up to just the support crew. That support team will enter the area and begin preparations for arrival of the astronauts at the White Room at about T-minus 3 hours. Following that poll, the launch director will provide a countdown status briefing. We might be able to hear that depending upon what's going on the nets. But right now, as the clock continues counting down, we're going to check in with Gary Jordan. He is with the flight control team at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Mission Control, Houston. How are the teams looking there, Gary?
Thank you, John, and welcome everyone to Mission Control Houston. This room you see behind me is one of 3 flight control rooms at the Johnson Space Center, also known as Flight Control Room 1. This is where teams monitor and direct all of the operations on the International Space Station. It remains staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And today the team is especially focused on monitoring today's launch operations and making final preparations for Bob and Doug to dock with the station tomorrow morning. Today, I'm joined remotely by NASA astronaut Rex Walheim, who was on that last flight from American shores 9 years ago, STS-135, with Doug Hurley. Rex flew on 2 shuttle missions before that and is now the Deputy Director of Safety and Mission Assurance here at the Johnson Space Center. Rex, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, Gary. Nice to be here.
Now, Rex, we're closing in on the suit-up process for Bob and Doug down at the Cape. What were some of the thoughts going through your head as part of the crew suiting up for a shuttle flight for the very last time?
It's just it's a really exciting time. You've kind of practiced it many times before, but you know this is for real. But again, you never know for sure whether it's going to be for real. So for STS-135, we only had a 30% chance of launching on our actual launch day. So you're thinking, it's probably not going to happen. But you know, we got to be ready for game day. And so you get suited up, and you walk out those storied corridors where Neil Armstrong walked out before he went to the moon, and get on the Astrovan in our case and head out to the launch pad.
Rex, as I recall, the weather was not so favorable for STS-135 in the beginning of the day, but started looking a little bit better towards launch time, and you were able to get off the pad. Though you had to scrub for weather on 110 and a few times on 122, it seems to be a normal thing for human spaceflight.
Yes, it is. It's like I say, you never know what your launch day is, so you have to be prepared anyways, no matter whether the vehicle may have issues that they're working at the last minute or the weather may not cooperate. So you get ready and do the countdown. And on STS-135, it didn't look very good. Like I said, we had only a 30% chance of go. And so we got out there anyways, and we got strapped in, and we weren't sure whether there was going to be go or not. And our commander looked outside and said, well, I got good news and I got bad news. The bad news is it's raining, but the good news is it looks like it's clearing to the west. And sure enough, they brought the count back down to T-minus 9, where they checked the weather, and they decided it was go. And so, hey, we're going. This is going to be great. Then they brought the countdown all the way down to 31 seconds, and the clock stopped. We didn't get any alarms or anything, and we're kind of looking around, what's going on? And we heard over the intercom that the launch was halted due to a malfunction. And we're like, what kind of malfunction? And And sure enough, we figured, okay, well, now we're not going to launch for sure. It's just 31 seconds from launch. We've only got like a minute hold time, and so your mood starts going down. And figured, well, doesn't look like it was going to be it. But turned out the team at the Kennedy Space Center knew what the problem was. They wanted to make sure that the gaseous oxygen hood, the arm, had moved out of the way so the shuttle could launch. They took a camera, verified it was, and then they picked up the count. And when they pick up the count from 31 seconds, they think, holy cow, now we really are going. And so it doesn't give you a whole lot of time to collect your thoughts, but all of a sudden, T-minus 6 seconds, the engines start up, and at T-minus 0, you feel that big jolt, and hey, it is today, and you get ready to do the mission.